Welcome back to The Rank. I'm John, and there are moments in life where doing the right thing doesn't actually change the outcome. And this story is all about what that feels like. Now, right from the jump, this movie is putting you at ease. As we go through the opening credits, we're looking at a bunch of old toys and things that will make more sense as we progress through the film. And the footage of these old toys, along with the credits, are accompanied by a soothing melody from this film's score. It all at once made you feel like there was going to be a certain slowness to the film, but slowness in the sense of comfort, not dullness. It was as if the movie was going to hold your hand as we progressed through the story. And in a lot of ways, that's exactly what it did. We're presented with a time frame and it's reinforced with a voiceover that is both very literary in its prose, but also reinforces the timeline with a reference to FDR's speech about having nothing to fear but fear itself. So we're in the post-Depression South. People are just trying to get by. We're introduced to Scout, whose perspective most of the movie takes place from. She's a young girl about to start school. She's got an older brother named Jem, and a principled, stoic father named Atticus. The weird part is that both her and her brother call their father by his name, Atticus, never Dad. But there's one more kid that we need to meet, and that's the neighbor's nephew, Dill. And Dill, Jem, and Scout are gonna lead us through this story. But their story is ostensibly about Boo Radley. Now, the Radleys are a family that live nearby, but have a lot of town gossip spread about them, especially Boo. You know, I've lived in my fair share of neighborhoods in my time, but I've never heard these kind of stories about other people in the neighborhood. Is this a real thing that happens? Because they describe it happening in movies and shows all the time. Do I not know about it because I'm the one that people are always gossiping about? Maybe I'm the crazy person. Let me know in the comments if you guys have ever experienced this. Like when you were kids, were you guys like, oh, that house down the street, that's like a ghost house, or, you know, there was a murder there, or whatever, some crazy stuff. Anyway, their fascination with Boo Radley is sort of interestingly wrapped around and within another story, which is the trial of Tom Robinson. So Atticus is an attorney and he's got the unenviable task of defending Tom, who just so happens to be a black man in the 1930s South who has been accused of raping a white woman. So the outlook for him, not good. But before the movie dives into the trial of Tom Robinson, we're gonna get a bunch of scenes that show Atticus's character. So like in one scene, he's kind in the way he treats an elderly woman who's actually been kind of rude to his kids. He gives the courtesy of allowing people their own peculiarities when he won't engage in the talk about Boo Radley, the gossip around town. He's gentle in the handling of his kids. He's intelligent and thoughtful and calm. But as we find out, he's also a man of action. There's a rabid dog in the street a little bit later in the movie, and he's apparently the best shot in the county, which nobody would know, and he's counted upon to put the dog down. Basically, the man is just plain good. He's just good. He's a good guy. He's almost too good. He seems flawless. And although he does seem flawless, the movie also consistently reminds us that the story is unfolding from the perspective of the kids. And it's because of this that we can excuse it for making a character so blatantly good, because this is how the kids view him. This is how they remember their dad. They remember him as a person who doesn't make a wrong choice. He always chooses the right option, and he doesn't hurt people. Hey, if my kids grow up and tell stories like that about me, I'll know I did something right. Now, while we're building Atticus's character, we're watching the kids continue to try to get a glimpse of Boo Radley, to the point of harassment, really. They sneak onto his porch, they sneak under the family fence, and Jem ends up getting his pants stuck there. They just tend to get themselves into precarious positions, especially around poor Boo. Now, I would say this goes to their character, but really, they're just kids, and they're kids that don't have smartphones. Like, can you imagine the kids of today doing this kind of thing to entertain themselves? I think not. And it's not entirely their fault, because the kids of today aren't really afforded the same level of walk around the town freedom as these kids in this movie get. Now, the movie does confront a lot of topics, but essentially the biggest is don't judge a book by its cover, unless they're a drunkard white guy. Then what you see is pretty much what you get. And this is true of Mr. Bob Ewell, who was the father of the woman who was claimed rape against Tom Robinson. Now, Atticus is going to get the trial postponed after he stops an attempted lynching. Well, actually, Scout stops the attempted lynching by being innocent and naive and sweet. It was actually a touching scene where they are forced to reflect on their own shame here. But most of what's happening in this movie is between the time of when he gets the trial postponed and when the trial happens. There's this looming kind of danger as we watch the kids being kids. And when the trial finally comes, we are treated to some serious overacting. And I really don't want to shit on this movie, but yikes. The woman who played Mayella is just terrible. It's just not good. Now, the guy who played Tom Robinson isn't great either, but if it wasn't like mixed with this woman who played Mayella, it wouldn't be as bad. It wouldn't be as noticeably bad. But they sort of combine together for like ultimate badness. But the point of this whole thing is that they're going to show that he's very clearly been falsely accused. And amazingly, the jury still finds him guilty. Atticus has proven that this is really more about shame, the shame of a white woman desiring a black man. And the fact that that premise feels so plausible and true is where the real shame is. Now, I couldn't remember how the trial turned out. I saw it a long time ago when I was younger, and I was actually kind of shocked by the outcome. I thought for sure it was going to be a good triumphs over evil situation, but it wasn't. And the movie approaches this very well because you feel it from this sort of loss of innocence perspective. How could the person who was obviously right be found wrong? It makes you sit in that feeling of unfairness. And it's funny because if you were to read this as a news story, you would just sort of shake your head and let the cynicism take over. But watching it this way, the weight feels heavier. The thing is, though, the trial is over. What else could there possibly be? Well, Tom Robinson is apparently shot and killed trying to escape jail, even though Atticus told him to be calm because he thought they had a really good chance in appeal. And the deputy says that the officer who shot him was trying to only wound him, but missed. Now, in a more modern movie, that line would have been met with definitely some cynicism, but it's just taken at face value here. And when Atticus goes to Tom's family to tell them, Ewell shows up and ends up spitting in Atticus's face. How Atticus didn't knock this man senseless after this, I do not know. But that pretty much wraps up the Tom Robinson story. And I have to say, there is a little bit of the white savior complex going on here when everybody's like, stand up, your father's walking. You know, Atticus Finch is walking. That's fine. I don't know if it would play that well in the modern age. But the kids still haven't met Boo Radley, so there's more movie to go. And they haven't met him even though Boo has been hiding them trinkets in a tree hollow. And when they finally do meet him, it's because he saves their life. To save the kids, Boo ends up stabbing and killing Bob Ewell, and then carries an unconscious Jem back to the house, with Scout running after them. And we end with the deputy telling Atticus that Mr. Ewell fell on his knife. He's like, they've already let one man get killed who didn't deserve it, and he'll be damned if he's gonna arrest someone for killing somebody who did deserve it. That's basically the premise here. Now, there are a lot of moral implications. I mean, is it truly good that Boo murders Bob Ewell? I mean, it's good that he saves the kids, but did Bob have a weapon on him? Was it his knife? Did Boo take his knife and stab him? I just don't know. But they sort of make this equivalent, like the arresting of Boo Radley in this case would be the equivalent to killing a mockingbird. I don't know that that's really the same. I mean, I think it would be clear that he was acting in defense and probably wouldn't have had charges pressed against him by the state, but it just seems like pretending it didn't happen is not really the right path either. But they end the movie on that note, and we gotta move on to the potent notables.
Potent notables.
So as always, we start the potent notables with the box office. To Kill a Mockingbird made $13.1 million against a budget of just $2 million. So a really strong return for the film. And a big part of that success starts with Gregory Peck as Atticus Finch. After being offered the role, Peck read To Kill a Mockingbird in one sitting and immediately called the director Robert Mulligan to say he wanted the part. And from the very beginning, it was clear on how important that casting choice was. The first scene Peck filmed was the moment where Atticus returns home from work and is greeted by his children. And Harper Lee, the author of the book, was on set that day, and she was moved to tears. And when Peck asked why, she told him that he looked exactly like her father, who obviously had been the inspiration for Atticus. She even noted to Peck that he had the same round stomach. And Peck's response? That's not a potbelly, Harper. That's great acting. And that connection carried beyond the screen as well. Mary Badham, who played Scout, formed a lifelong bond with Peck. He always called her Scout, and she always called him Atticus. And the relationships from the film extended even further. Brock Peters, who played Tom Robinson, would go on to deliver Gregory Peck's eulogy at his funeral in 2003. Now, behind the scenes, the director had to change his approach, especially with the younger cast. He quickly realized that too many takes caused the child actors to lose their natural performances. So he relied heavily on first takes to preserve their authenticity. I think it worked. And those child characters were deeply rooted in real life. The character of Dill was actually based on Truman Capote, Capote, who was a childhood friend of Harper Lee. Capote would spend summers in Lee's hometown, and Dill's imaginative personality, like claiming his father owned a railroad, was inspired directly by Truman. Even Boo Radley has real-world inspiration, and Robert Duvall makes his film debut as Boo Radley without any dialogue. And to prepare for the role, he stayed out of the sun for 6 weeks and dyed his hair blonde to reflect the character's reclusive lifestyle. And the character itself was partially based on a real person from Harper Lee's childhood, Alfred's son Boulevard, who lived nearby and was largely confined to his home after a vandalism incident. So to wrap things up here, To Kill a Mockingbird was nominated for 8 Academy Awards, winning 3. The categories it won were Best Art and Set Direction, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Actor for Gregory Peck. But let's find out how it ranked.
Oh, wait.
So as you can see from the scores next to me, this movie did pretty well, and there's a reason for that. On a technical level, it's very strong. Gregory Peck gives an all-time performance, the writing is excellent, and the score does a great job setting the tone without overwhelming the story. But what really makes it stand out is how it's told. Everything is filtered through the perspective of children, which allows the film to present really heavy themes, racism, injustice, morality, in a way that feels both accessible and deeply emotional, but not overly heavy or contrived. And because of that, moments that might otherwise feel distant or historical end up feeling very personal. Now, it's not perfect. There are a few performances that don't quite land. I'm looking at you, Mayella. And at times it can feel a little slow or staged, but those issues never take away from what the movie is trying to do. At the end of the day, this is a powerful, thoughtful film that earns its reputation as a classic, not because it's flawless, but because of how effectively it makes you feel and reflect. If you'd like a more in-depth breakdown of the categories, you can check that out on my Patreon page, patreon.com/TheRankPodcast. You can become a patron. And so, to wrap things up with my rank, I love this movie. I think there are some areas that I would change if I could, like hiring a different actress to play Mayella, but all in all, it's a beautiful movie. I gave it a 9.5. So altogether, that puts To Kill a Mockingbird at an 86.75, which makes it a supreme cinema. This officially makes it the best movie of 1962 by a narrow 0.25 margin, just barely beating out Mutiny on the Bounty. But it's another one the Academy got wrong, at least according to the rank. So 1962 officially goes To Kill a Mockingbird, then Mutiny on the Bounty, then The Longest Day, then Lawrence of Arabia, and then The Music Man. But they all ended up in the top 3 tiers, so it was a good year. Now, as far as all time, To Kill a Mockingbird ended up tied for 26th on the all-time list with The Bridge on the River Kwai, just below Begonia and Sentimental Value, and just above The Revenant. And if you'd like to see the full list, it's on my website, therankpodcast.com. And if you're ranking along with me, drop your score for this one in the comments. But thanks for watching. Check out my other Best Picture ranking episodes or any of my other movie or sitcom ranking episodes on this channel. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. But the jury has reached a verdict. This episode is over. If you'd like to see more in-depth review... Cut! If you'd like to see my in-depth rankings for... How do I want to say this? Cut! If you want to see the... Cut!
Take 3.
If you want to see the in-depth... What do I can't say it. Oh, man.
We're gonna be here a while.